Well, the Saints pretty much had a set 53-man roster going into Labor Day weekend holiday. Coming out of it, I don't think there's going to be much changes, if any, till at least the beginning of next week. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So before we run through the roster, and we're going to run through it fairly quick because really not much changes since the last time we did it. But I think that's the important point why we didn't see a lot of changes. Think the biggest reason is, like we talked about in the last videos, tight on the salary cap. Checked over the cap today. It seems like they finally caught up with all the roster moves, and so I'm assuming they figured out all the money right. They have it right around $1 million in cap space, which is no wiggle room whatsoever. And again, grain of salt when you're dealing with websites like that. There's probably a margin of error one way or the other on their final number. Hopefully, it's greater than a million, but there is a possibility it's a little less. So, right there's one of your driving factors on not being able to do much in the immediate future. Another thing is designation for injured players, whether it's IR, PUP, designated to return. They kind of have slightly different versions in the preseason as opposed to once season starts, especially about how many you can bring back. Because I think it's two in preseason, and then you can designate more after. We do have some injured players on the roster. Now, the good news is it sounds like most of them are ready to come back, especially some of the big names we're expecting to see, like Marshawn, Kool-Aid, Rashid, those guys. Need them on the field. Hope is we'll start seeing them show up at practice, and we'll know for sure because now, starting this week, Saints are required to release the practice reports during the week prior to the injury report on Friday. So we'll know definitely by then. The other thing is not only with the injury designations, there also, and I do not know what the rules were anymore, but I can give the best example back in 2009. I think it was Mike McKenzie and Chris McAllister. We got some injuries at corner, but after the start of the season, you could go in and sign veteran free agents. And I think to some degree the rule is still like this, but they don't get guaranteed contracts through 17 game season. So if you bring them in, they play a couple of games and you cut them, you don't owe them, at least not all of the contract for the remaining games they're not going to play. And in the case of 2009, a couple of different guys, we cut, bring back later, cut, bring. So they bounced on the team two or three times. I don't know if it's that extreme anymore where you can get away with that, but I know there is some version of it. And a lot of teams use that where you see, cuts coming in. I know we've used similar things in the last couple of seasons when we were really tight against the cap. So, possibility that this is all plan type stuff, knowing these little rules with the loopholes, and the Saints know when it comes to salary loopholes and rules better than anybody in the league. Where, for example, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but we know Kalen Saunders has a calf injury that sounds pretty significant. We don't know how much. We won't know until they're forced to start reporting this stuff with the NFL. But it could very well be he's may have some type of short-term IR or something with a return in his near future, but he's going to be inactive on Sunday. They're just holding the spot because they want to do that once the season starts because it is a slightly different set of rules. And the flip side of this is if they start doing that with a couple of these injured players, Nick Saldivari comes to mind too as another possibility of this. Um, you don't have to go sign a veteran because our strange can't believe conversations we were having about can't believe Jonathan Abram got cut. Can't believe, Hergel got cut or so and so got cut. Yet they wound up back on the practice squad. It's almost like that's our first free agent pool because we're going to be making some moves maybe after the season starts. It's going to affect some of those guys, and they're just kind of sitting on the practice squad for week one. And in effect, we're going to call them up from AAA and put them back on the active 53. I suspect there will be some of that going on. They did try to make two moves, and I thought they were both good moves. One worked out swimmingly. The other one turned out to be not, it just ridiculous, it sounds like. But Ridgeway, I love that move. You basically traded a low round pick in 2025 for a lower round pick, 6 to 7, and you get Ridgeway. Um, Good deal. I may use this phrase a lot during the season, maybe even a couple more times in this video, but the whole jack of all trades, not really a master of none. Uh, I think a lot of times people think that it's derogatory. I don't. I think it just means you're very good at a lot of stuff. You just may not be the greatest at any one of them. But in a situation like football, when you have guys like that you can put on the field and you're not worried, look, there's one thing he can't do that the other team's going to be able to exploit. It's more like, no, he can plug the holes, he can fill in. He's a depth piece, and that's what Ridgeway is. And look, you're not getting the high end big numbers in the run game or the sack game or whatever you want, but he's not hurting you when he's out there taking snaps and giving guys rest and getting in the rotation. What I like about him, and this seems to have been echoed. I caught Ross Jackson on Locked On Saints a couple of days ago, and he brought up a clip from the Locked On Redskins guy who basically echoed what Dennis Allen said. This is a guy that Dennis Allen and them had been looking at when he was drafted by Dallas a few years ago. But they liked then and they still like now. He's big, he's physical, he can move for his size. He's got a high motor, a little bit of a violent streak, it sounds like he likes to hit people and create havoc. A little bit of a mean streak, maybe. Um, all great stuff for a defensive lineman that you didn't really give up that much for, that who's currently under contract. So good move. Saints used to make really good moves like that in the past. We kind of gotten away from it. Glad to see that, we could still do it and make more of them. Kene Wangwu, all pro return guy from Minnesota, 4-core special teamer, which basically means button kick returns, button kick coverage, almost a JT Gray with serious return ability. Really good size. I think he was like 6 foot 210 with 4.29 speed. What's not to love about that? It sounded like they struggled trying in Minnesota to make a running back out of him, but it sounded like the Saints were excited. Going, hey, we're going to give it a shot. And I think that was important because we'll talk about potential lack of really explosiveness out of the running backs we did keep. He may have been able to help out there, even if you could make him an every down running back. But maybe that little guy, that piece, that Frisco, Miami, all these teams that run this scheme love to have at least one real, in Miami's case, everybody, really fast guy. They're going to scheme in a couple times a game to try to get the ball to pop a big play, and sometimes throw him out there, making the defense sweat, going, holy crap, we got to make sure that dude doesn't get the ball because we can't catch it. Fortunately, sounds like from what I heard, it was a hamstring issue. Minnesota did not cut him with any type of injury designation, so they had no idea this potential. So they brought him in, gave him the physical, found the injury, and that was that. Kind of shady stuff in Minnesota if that happens to be true, but who knows. But didn't kind of work out the way we wanted. And I think one of the reasons why they were excited is I'm going to finish this going all the way back full circle. Some of the guys we kept at some positions may have been with an eye on special teams. In the fact that, well, some of these guys return, but they don't really cover, or some of these guys cover, but they really can't return. We've got to use multiple. All of a sudden, you add one guy that goes, he can do it all. So it may, some of these players we kept at the back end at some of the skill positions that were primarily special teams, maybe they go to the practice squad and some of those veterans that were sitting there come up. So fortunately, we'll never know. It didn't work out, but when all that was announced, I was really excited as both of them great deals. So I'm kind of a little disappointed that Wangwu didn't work out like we wanted. So again, not much has changed since the last time we looked at the roster. Much has changed in the salary cap situation, which makes it harder to make changes in the roster situation, at least right now. So probably going to roll through this real quick, but there are a couple of points that I want to bring up. One of which, as far as talking about quarterbacks right now, healthy Carr with his head screwed on straight, running the offense correctly is your best chance to win right now. Rattler probably should be your backup number 2, but I really think you need to develop Haener. Figure out a way you need to keep developing both of them, because as we discussed in the last video about the salary cap, and I will post that one on the end card at the end of this video, so anybody who missed it or wants to go back and watch it again. If you ever do decide to move on Carr with the crazy ass contract that we've given him right now, one of the ways you're going to have to be able to do that is to pay those 2 guys to be a starter and a backup really next to nothing for the next couple of years to allow you to do that. So either way, and then if you're going to lock on a Carr and Rattler's going to be the guy that's going to replace him at the end of Carr's contract or just previous when he gets real cheap to get rid of him and move on like they sometimes do with veterans when the next guy's ready. Um, you keep developing Haener, you have a trade piece somebody may be interested in if he shows he's good enough to, yeah, kind of that Jimmy G example we gave last video. So like this room, like the way it's set up. I think if it stays like this during the season or even into next season, it helps the Saints. If there's some changes, the Saints can help themselves with the two young players that they have sitting on this roster. Not many NFL teams, I don't think, can be in this position. So that's good. At a position as important as quarterback, nonetheless. Look, the only issue I have with the running back room, and it kind of ties directly into Jamal Williams, don't know what he has left in the tank. He's a really good zone runner, especially inside zone with Green Bay and especially Detroit, who had some great schemes and play calls and use them correctly. Last year, we didn't do either. So don't really know what we got. Wasn't wholly impressed. Last season, a couple carries this preseason did raise my eyebrow, a couple, not so much. Really don't know. But when you're talking about explosive plays, and that's kind of tied in why I was a little excited about trying to sneak Wongwu in here and getting a couple snaps from him. Alvin's probably okay. But we don't know for sure because our crappy offense the last 2 years didn't really display it for him. But let's assume he has it. We're okay there. Taysom's going to get some snaps both out of fullback and tailback position. He's a little different explosive. He's power explosion with speed. But that's fine too. But it's still the ability to get downfield and gain a lot of yardage and put a lot of fear in the defense. Prentice is solid fullback when he's going to play there, especially when lead blocking for Taysom. We did see one sample of that in preseason, and it looked pretty good. Kendre Miller is just the disappointment that keeps on disappointing. I really want to see what he could do in this offense because I think he is young and explosive. Seemed to show it with little bit we got out of him last year before the injuries came back. But man, it's just disappointing because I was looking so forward to him being one of those guys who would probably suck for Jordan Mims, so he may not make the team. But Miller was supposed to be that guy, the next man up. That was going to be the next kind of Alvin Kamara like, so to speak. So we'll see how it turns out. And speaking of Mims, I am glad he's got the opportunity. I like the way he runs. I don't know about his explosion necessarily. He was running with twos and threes most of preseason, and the most work he got was against basically Tennessee's ones and twos, and he looked really good doing it. Can he pop a big play? It was kind of hard to find out in those situations. Hopefully, we find out. Like, be nice to find out Sunday, and you see him, crack one out of there for a 45-yard touchdown run, and you go, all right, we're good there. And if that would have happened, Miller may be in a very precarious situation before this is all over. Wide receiver, look, using basically what Frisco more or less does and Miami definitely does as examples of teams who are going to run very similar to what we're going to run. They believe in 1 and 2 receivers. They believe in having 3s and 4s and even 5s and sometimes 6s because sometimes both teams go very deep in their wide receiver room. But when you get out of the 2s, guys kind of have specific roles or specific plays, or they're trying to do specific things. It's not the general concept we think about, like, say, in Sean's offense, where we were going, okay, outside receiver, slot receiver, so many balls here, so many there, top 3 guys. And a lot of teams around the NFL do that. I suspect you'll see something similar. Cedric Wilson's a veteran presence. I think he has to be on this team, and he can help you. And he does some stuff really well, and he doesn't drop the ball. But Perry Means and Tipton to get those big explosive plays coming out in those situations. And if you have a third receiver concept in this offense, it's probably A.T. Perry, and I do not have a problem with that. But when you start getting, again, Wilson never drops passes, so I'm not really worried about him. But Perry Means and Tipton have to catch the ball and make plays with him after. And if they do those 2 things, we're fine. And what's really great about it, 3 young receivers. Because as the top 2 guys realize their potential that we all think we have, they going to get expensive. And it always gives you an option not to get caught up in what's going on in a lot of teams right now. Look around the league. Really, truly, only one top receiver who wants to get paid as the number one wide receiver, and they're holding in, holding out, all kind of crazy crap. You want to get back to having a solid receiving core and that bottom end potential guys that may take a couple of years, but they can get it up on the top end guy, and you don't have to pay a wide receiver 8-year, $30 million contract or whatever the hell they'll be getting at that point. I said it in the comments. A lot of people were asking, "Hey, what do you think about the tight end?" I am so confused what's going on here. It's not even funny. And this is where I threw Taysom, but previous conversations in the 3 previous groups, quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, don't forget Taysom's going to be in the mix on all of them. So that also puts a little dynamic and a little playmaking type thing on all 3 groups and puts it here also. We kept a lot. We have Raiders sitting on IR and didn't release him with a designation or anything like that. So it looks like we're interested in keeping him around. We've got 2 we re-signed to the practice squad. Actually, technically 3 because we put Fairchild there, then cut him and signed Welch. A lot of tight end movement. Don't really know what's going on here, why we're so worried about it. But I know this. Moreau is definitely making this team. Because again, jack of all trades, but as a tight end, same thing. You may not want to throw a pass to him in the end zone with no time left to tie the game up. Last time I'm going to mention Jacksonville last year, I promise. But for the most part, you need him on the field doing the stuff that he does as a solid pro. And he can block, he can catch, he can athletic enough to get you a little bit after the catch. Very smart guy, very football savvy guy. Saw him the way they were using him in some instances in the preseason, chip, but where he could roll out, get in a route, get where he needs to be wide open, take the check down and go. So, look, and the check down and go is going to be a big part of this offense because it's quite obvious they're going to use that as an extension of the run. And he's a guy that can help you there because he's not ever going to draw a lot of attention, but he can catch a ball and move it upfield, especially when you're not covering him, and gain some yards. Juwan Johnson is supposed to be your more athletic big play guy. 2 years ago, he had a pretty good season. Last year, he was as terrible as a lot of our other skill position players. But he is sitting there with a designation that if we were to cut him or trade him or do whatever, he creates cap space for us this year. I believe it was $3.5 million. So plus the $1 million we currently have, he's playing for somebody else. It's now $4.5 million. So I think there's one, keep an eye on him. And that would explain having all this extra tight end depth where you're going to figure Moreau and I guess Hoker, because they really like him. It sounds like he's coming back from injury. They're going to pick up a lot of the slack. Taysom's going to be there, but you still want to have, whether it's Jacobson or Welch or they bring Fairchild, however it works out. I am not saying this is going to happen. I'm not advocating for this to happen one way or the other, but I'm saying in a team that's trying to get younger and more athletic at certain spots while not killing themselves moving on from veterans, tight end is one spot where they can kind of do both and create cap space for this year. So just keep it in mind. All I'm saying, I think it's a possibility. It could be a sneaky one that happens somewhere down the road. This has got me as flummoxed as tight ends that our weakest position by far on this team. I don't think anybody could argue that. You're only carrying 8 guys. It's touchy. I put Haener on here for the IR because I don't know if he can be designated return or not, but it is what it is. McCoy's fine. Ruiz is fine. Salaveri was one that I found very interesting, and I don't know which way that's going to go. Is he ready to come back? Is he a guy that might get slapped with an injury designation next week? I'm assuming, till we know for sure, Lucas Patrick's the starter, but it sounds like they want him to primarily be the backup center guard. So again, he's a pro jack of all trades type of offensive lineman. Don't know if he's ever going to be overly spectacular, the guy you want to leave on, but he can come in, fill in, and handle the job apparently and do okay there. So kind of a veteran backup swing guy between center and guard. Not a invaluable guy to have in your roster. And then when you look at tackle, Young and Udo, provided they're the backup tackles, are technically kind of the backup guard because they got guards. They got a lot of work there. So it does give them some flexibility, but it just, I don't know. I suspect Fuaga and Penning are going to be the starters. I think it's going to be a lot of on the job training, trial by fire, a little bit like we did with Penning last year. And if it doesn't work or has trouble or looks like it's headed for trouble or it's not going to work, Young and Udo would likely step up for either one of those two or some type of adjustment made where Penning sits, Fuaga goes to right tackle, and Young starts at the left tackle at that point. But whatever the shakeup is, it just doesn't seem like we have enough linemen and depth there to pull any type of shuffle if we need to do it. And I don't want to say the I word, but that would complicate things even worse. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Hopefully they have a plan. And to tie up the offense, keep in mind, other than one drive in Frisco, really, we didn't see at any point any type of scheme, game plan, anything, play calling of what this offense could potentially be with the players we have trying to run it. Now, second and third team came in, you saw a little bit more of it with a lot younger players and the guys trying to make the roster. But with our ones, and I'll say the same thing when we get to defense. Ones and our primary twos that played with the ones, it was very vanilla for the most part, both sides of the ball as a general rule. So maybe when you start doing all the game planning and get a little more exotic on both sides of the ball, some of the people were scratching their head about maybe, okay, now we can get them in. We're going to create positions for them to have a better chance to succeed or a better chance to make plays. I don't know. That's me whistling in the dark, trying not to be scared about the status of our offensive line. Defensive edge is right there with it. We'll get to the interior guys in a minute. And I'm perfectly happy with what's going on there, but I'm still a little concerned here. I've voiced them many times. You know what they are. All right, we even need to talk about it again. The only thing we need to talk about here, and I've got Pascal on the pup up to mention that maybe he's coming back. It sounded like when this was initially the injury in the spring, sounded like, yeah, it was a possibility. Haven't heard much lately, but he could be a little cavalry coming at some point if it does work out where they can bring him back and get him on the field for maybe the middle or later in the season, but you never know. Interior, I'm liking this. It's a very strong group in my mind, even if Saunders is injured more severe than we're hoping he is, which would also explain the Ridgeway trade quite a bit. You kept Boyd, and that seemed like a practice squad move. But again, if you start doing something here where Saunders gets put on IR to return and he's going to miss whatever the minimum is, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, where you do that, but you had Vickers, one of the guys that I thought would make it before Boyd, sitting there on the practice squad. He pops up and you're right back where you were. I don't know if anybody was really looking at them keeping 5 D tackles because this is kind of one of the positions with the 5 D ends, 10 defensive linemen just seemed like a lot. However, how this shakes out, got to remember Cam Jordan and or Peyton Turner may slip inside a little more. So I'm like, it seems like we're really deep at defensive tackle. So I don't know if this is going to be one of the areas where there may be some type of move after week 1. I feel like it will be, but we'll see. But one thing I will say about this group is you can now go very big with Boyd, Ridgeway, Saunders, and Brzee. Gives you the option of think back to 2017, 2018, Sheldon Rankins. Profiles a lot like Brian Brzee does in his game, where they used to go kind of real heavy against certain teams in certain situations, and they used to kick Sheldon Rankins out to basically defensive end. To get a little pass rush there and get a lot of athletic ability on that edge that kind of has a chance to go play in space if things go sideways when you're trying to go run heavy. I think Brzee gives you that also. So we may dust off a little scheme defensively. We haven't run 4 years or longer, 4 or 5 years. because we never quite had the personnel to do it. Kind of seems like we're starting to bring some personnel back that can do, because those were the years where you did see Cam kick inside a little bit and be very effective. And then, like I said, the big heavy package with our big defensive tackles that were normally rotational, kind of beefing up the middle and Rankins outside. I think you can see something similar here. So it's very interesting what they did. Again, I don't think any of this is going to change much between now and Sunday, but after Sunday, there could be something there. Linebackers, same thing. I'm gonna say, very good group. Kind of shocked. DeMarco Jackson and Jalen Ford both made it. Thought they'd wind up on the pup. Sorry, not the pup. The practice squad. Orgy's a young guy. Sounds like he's really gonna kind of be a primary backup in there. But Khalil Hudson is sitting. So again, you could make a move that we're not seeing yet for some reason next week, where somebody get signed to the practice squad. Hudson comes up and joins this group. So, but regardless, the guys you got down there plus the guys you got on the roster, I think this is a really solid group, and they're going to have to play really, really well to kind of help with some of the stuff, I think, in the interior run game until we know that's improved, as well as in the passing and the coverage game a little bit. Lattimore and Debo sound like they're coming back, and McKinstry for that matter. So this room it's like signing some top free agent corners, because you never really had all three of them together, and some of them missed quite significant amount of time, but they show back up. That is a solid room. And what I like about it is you're very good at different levels. Veteran in Marshawn, a second contract guy coming up into Debo. We'll see if we can keep him. Rookie McKinstry. Taylor is going to be the guy that's on the trajectory of a Debo. And keeping Rico Payton. The more I think about it, great, brilliant move. Now you're throwing a really young, impressive talent, even though he's an undrafted rookie, into the mix with a chance to develop him. And I think he's shown enough ability that you could put him on the field and he can make some plays for you. May just be situational or a fill in a rough spot and coming in as a depth piece right now, plus special teams. But the more I think about this, the more I like, again, somebody cheap under contract that ought to be able to help you. This is another one. A lot of veterans there, except Howden, JT Gray primarily, special team guy. Something gets in trouble here, goes out of whack. They brought Abram back, who's, again, another surprise cut for me. He's sitting on the practice squad right now, and there may be some subsequent move coming where he shows back up here and he's back into the safety mix. So wait and see how that plays out. You kept the right kicker and punter in my mind. You're young and solid. As long as they keep playing ball, you're fine here. And you kind of just go to the practice squad. You've got a potential out in Smith if Groupie struggles, and you have basically you can call him up 3 times, I think, to the active roster it is, and kind of get the exemption. So Groupie struggles, you got a couple chances with Smith if you want to bring him up or sign the veteran or whatever they're going to do. But for the most part, when you look at this list, it's young developing guys. Like Miller Bradford or Isaiah Stallbert, for example, sitting there, Charlie Smith sitting there. A lot of veterans like Abram or Amani, when you get in trouble, Hergel, Lemieux, you can pull those guys up. Equinemius, St. Brown, if some of those young receivers struggle, you kind of got the veteran guy there that I thought also was kind of a surprise cut. But you also got young guys you want to develop. On both sides of the ball. You have the extra tight ends there. You get a pitch, a defensive end. I think Lalos probably should have made the roster, but he's sitting right there ready to go if you need him. Vickers, too, for the same thing on the interior. So I think they gave, if you want to talk poker terms, Saints kind of gave themselves a lot of outs. The way this roster is constructed right now, and possibly if they're going to try to work the system, so to speak, in the upcoming week or next week, where they're going to shuffle some stuff around, and you may see a situation where they get a little more cap space, or somebody they wanted to sign, they just needed to wait for the season to start for the contract situation is something that they could work with, whatever. So I don't anticipate, like I said, anything happening between now and after we play on Sunday going into next week. But I could see some moves happening one way or the other, whether it's just a few subtle ones or some combination where maybe they do have an offensive lineman out there. I looked at a list. I don't know if there's anybody really exciting unless you want to go big money veteran, which I don't think they can do. Um, but maybe there is. Maybe there's a way. They're good at doing stuff like this. So it's entirely possible that roster could subsequently change real quick next week. I just don't think so. I think the more we think about it, the 2-year plan has already started. And they really going to try to develop as much of these young players who are under contract and cheap as they possibly can this season. But it's not a rebuild because I don't think they're selling out. I think they're going hard to win as many games as they can. They're just trying to put themselves in a position to develop and do it with as much young, under contract, cheap talent as they can, ready to move on for some guys whose contracts are a little crazy and are going to start getting to the level where the production doesn't meet it, and likely most of them aren't. We're going to move on. So I think that's really the situation between last video and where we're rolling into Carolina this week. I think that's what it boils down to. The more I look at it, the more I think about it. So bang the thumbs up if you're with me on that. Also, make sure you like and subscribe. That all helps me out. Notifications, and that's going to help you out because we will be. I could do this real quick. I know I made a banner for it, but post game shows will be live at Sunday nights on Sunday, 12 and 3 o'clock kickoff for the Saints. When it's primetime kickoff, it's going to adjust. We'll let you know then. But we will be starting this Sunday night. Hopefully, we're celebrating a win and it'll be a fun one. But if not, there'll be a lot of moaning and groaning involved, believe me. So, either way, we're going to have fun doing it. So, hope you join us and have fun with us. And until the next time I see you, I'm Tim. Peace out. Who dat?